Okay, today is Thursday, March the 3rd, 2011. This is the start of an interview with Mr. Charles Arthur Petch at the RSVP office of Catholic Services of Macomb, located at 26238 Ryan Road, Warren, Michigan. Mr. Petch is 67 years of age, born May 30th, 1943. Mr. Petch currently resides at 63063 Cranston in Lenox, Michigan. My name is James Buckley. I will be the interviewer, and Gary McGiglio will be the videographer. Mr. Petch, would you please state for the record the branch of service you served in?
Yes, the U.S. Army.
Okay. And Charles indicated that he'd like to just be called Chuck. Nothing formal today, so why don't we start off with just a little bit about where you grew up and a little bit about your school years, and go from that point.
All right. I basically started school at Herman Clicks in it was now Clinton Township on 15 and Harper, and was there for the first 4 years of my elementary. And after that, we moved to Seminole Hills in Mount Clemens, and we went to Seminole Elementary. After that, went on to school for George Washington Junior High School, and graduated from there. And at that time, I had been living with my mother. My father and my mother had been divorced since I'd been 2, and my father wanted me to come up to Alpena with him, to reside with him. And when I did move up there on my, just the time before I went into high school, he offered me a chance to go to a military school. So I did that and tried to get into a military school in Ohio, and but my academics were not sufficiently up to par. So for the first year of high school, I went to Alpena High and took tutoring every day after school until I got my academic standards or equivalents to get into a military school. And at that time, a friend of his suggested that I go to Shattuck Military School in Faribault, Minnesota, which I went there for 3 years as a cadet, and graduated from there in 1961, which will be, this year will be my 50th anniversary, and as a cadet captain out of the ROTC program. After that time, I went on to college. Well, my academics were not the highest in the world, so I started off at Ferris and partied. So after being in military school for all the years, just wanted to break loose. So I partied until they said, well, you better take some time off. So after that, I went to Alpena Community College, and I was in a business administration, which I did not take to at all. So I finally made a deal with my father after another 1.5 years, and said, I will pay for my classes if you take care of the room and board. And he agreed, because he kind of gave up on me going any place. And I went into the industrial production technology end of it, where it's all pre-engineering courses. And I was fortunate enough to, I went from low D's and C's to A's and B's, because I was in a curriculum that I enjoyed. And the pre-engineering was a 2-year degree, which I successfully completed. And after that, there was I think about 10 or 12 of us that were offered to go on for 1 more year to get a second associate's degree in applied science. But we had to go as teams. So there's 6 teams, and basically the 6 teams had to work together for certain projects, and after that we obtained our second associate's degrees. At that time, my buddy that I was in school with he says, I'm going into the Seabees. Well, which he did, because he had some construction background with his father being a construction person. And he wanted me to go in as the partnership with him in service. And I said, well, I'm not ready for the Seabees, because I'm not that familiar with it. So I said, I'll take my chances, and I went to work. I went down to Detroit and started interviewing at Ford, GM, and Chrysler, and whatnot for positions. And finally, I was offered a couple of positions, and I took the one at Chrysler as a line foreman at the Warren Stamping plant. And as I was doing that, less than 3 months later, I was notified that I was being drafted out of the Elkona County office. And I had it sent down here to Macomb County, and I went with Macomb County team in 67 of January. And that's when I officially entered the service at Fort Wayne.
I see. And then you started basic training, and what was that, in Fort Leonard Wood?
Yes,
So,
they said we were supposed to go to Fort, the fort in Kentucky, but
Fort Knox?
Yeah, Fort Knox, etc. And we were on the train, and the train just kept on going to Fort Leonard Wood. We got off at Fort Leonard Wood, and there was about, I'd say about 5 or 6 of us that were said, you guys just sit here. We sat there for about 2 weeks and basically did nothing, and we were chosen to be acting sergeants in basic training. So we had to go through a 2-week intensive basic training course, which just, the shape I was in at the time just about killed me. So it was a learning experience right there. But when I got there, I also asked a sergeant at the desk. I said, well, here's my piece of paper I've got right here from ROTC saying that when I get into the Army, I become a PFC. He says, you take that piece of paper and 40 cents and you can get yourself a cup of coffee with it. That's about it. So after that, I said, okay, I'll never volunteer for a thing. So after that, I did go into the basic training as a acting sergeant. And one day, about halfway through the training, we were running the platoon around the barracks, and I stepped into a ditch, sprained my ankle. Well, I'm hopping along for another week, week and a half, and then there's a little shave-tail lieutenant coming up to me and says, you're faking it. And he was riding me for no end. So at that time, you got to remember, I was 23 years of age. And I wasn't a young kid, I wasn't intimidated by him or anything else. I just finally got a little ticked off, and I went into the CO. And I asked the CO, I says, do you condone this? Because he's not doing you any good, he's sure not doing me any good. Just get him off my back, all right? And the CO says, you have every right. He says, I will take the man to the side, and I will explain that he has not that right to, belittle you in front of your troops. All right, so he did so. And after that, we graduated with no problem. And then we went on to Fort Eustis, Virginia, to Seaman School. Well, a lot of the people there says, Seaman School, what's that? Well, again, the Army has a larger small fleet Navy than the Navy does, and it's attached to the transportation of the U.S. Army. And when we got to Fort Eustis at 12 o'clock at night, we were signed in, and the guy said, well, what do you want to get into? He said, well, I'll get into Seaman School. He said, well, you can get into anything. You've got your scholastic records are high enough. You've got the equivalent of 3 years of college. So what do you want? And I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, you can be helicopters, you can go in administration, you can go on the railroad, and you can also be in the boats. And I said, well, Chrysler's got a Marine service, so I'll go into the boats. And he said, would you want to be a seaman or what? I said, well, I'll go into the diesel marine engineering. So that's what I did. After seaman school, basic seaman school, AIT, we went to an advanced AIT, which is either a coxswain of the boat or a marine engineer on the boat. So I became a marine engineer on the boat. And so the group of us that graduated, we were supposed to be assigned to a company at Fort Eustis. All the boat companies were filled. So they sent us to a stevedore outfit. Well, the stevedore outfits, unbeknownst to a lot of us at that time, basically they're box humpers. They don't have the wherewithal or the understanding or the training or whatnot to do more than that. Most of them could not even pass a driver's license test. So we were there, and the sergeant asked us at the time, he said, what would you guys like to do? We have a motor pool here with heavy equipment, cranes, bulldozers, the generators, anything you'd like to have. And I said, well, you know, that bulldozer looks like fun. It was a World War II issue bulldozer, not hydraulic, but the old winch type, cable and winch. And you had to start it with a pony motor and a crank on the side. And so another fellow and I, we started with that. And we had lots of fun. They would go out, they'd take us out over to the Virginia Beach area, but they had some area, and we would just take sand here and put it over there and move it from place to place. So we enjoyed it, and basically we had the run of the motor pool and had no problems. And then, well, half the time I was there, at this time this is probably about September of '67, I was approached by another fellow Michigander that was attached to that unit, and he asked me if I wanted to be their NCO for licensing. So I had to be the NCO for the licensing, as I would have to for the company. And anybody that needed a license for anything, generator, driver's license, high-low, whatever it is, I had to take and cut orders for them, take them to the training, and then take them to the testing, the motor pool test, main motor pool. And they didn't give me an office, they didn't give me a typewriter, all I had was my car there. So I would do most of my work in the car, and then I'd go into the offices and borrow one of the typewriters, type up the orders, and take the people over there to be trained and tested. And a lot of the times the guys that were being tested, they had a hard time reading and understanding what it said, because like I said, their scholastics are very, very low. I don't even know if all of them ever even got out of high school. So we would test them and train them and do that. And then I would say this was in early December of '67, I was told by one of the fellows in my platoon that he volunteered me to go to Vietnam. I says, don't do me any favors, you know. And he says, no, we're all going as a group. So they signed me up for training in Vallejo, California, underneath the Navy. And we did PBR training in Mare Island, which was the nuclear training facility for the submarines. And so we got there, and after a week leave or something like that, and we checked in, and the guy at the check-in station says, well, here's your card. I said, what's this? It's a pass. What do you mean pass? In the Army, you don't get a pass. He said, when you're done with your schooling, this pass, you can just go off on and off the post, whatever you want, the base. So I had to give blood to get passed last time. And actually, when I was in Fort Eustis, I gave a quarter of blood to go on a 3-day weekend leave. So, or pine, I should say. And then at that time, when we did get that leave out of Fort Eustis, we went to a no restricted area, which was Washington, D.C. And we sat on the We were in our civvies, we sat on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and watched all the hippies and everyone else having their demonstration down through Washington D.C. And you could see there was some Army guys behind a cyclone fence that they were waiting there if they were needed for any of the outbreaks, which we just watched them and as they proceeded all the way into to the Arlington Cemetery and whatnot. So back to Mare Island, we were basically trained there for about a month. Had to learn how to swim, which wasn't always bad. And basically we went through the PBR training there off of the West Coast. And one thing we noticed that when we went out to the training canal that the area we were in, we would pass victory ships. And I mean hundreds of victory ships, just mothballed there. So we said, after we finished our training, we had another week or two off, and we were signed to leave and go to Vietnam. So that's where I say I had my first free trip from Uncle Sam. It was a round trip to, thank God, it was a round trip to Asia. So we left, I think it was in March, and I think I got to Vietnam mid-March, but on our way there, we were hauling this jumbo jet, and about halfway there, of course, we stopped in Hawaii, and they let us out to look around, but not go anyplace else. And they had us locked in the concourse. And then we got back in the plane, and we got up to about 30,000 feet, and some guy wanted to get off. He was at the door, ready to get out the door.
Yeah.
So they had to basically secure him down, and then we stopped in the Philippines for about 5-6 hours, and then went on to Long Binh. When I arrived at Long Binh, it was I think it was March 21st of '68. And after about 2 weeks being there, it was very boring. You had to do something. You'd go in there and you'd volunteer. And you'd volunteer for latrine duty. Bad way. What they had 50-gallon drum bottoms. They would cut it off maybe about a foot, 18 inches high, and that's where they would shove underneath the potty holes. All right? And there's no way to get rid of it. You'd take it out, and you'd throw fuel oil on it, and you'd start it, and you would burn. So you were on the burn detail.
Oh,
all right? So we basically got on a C-131 after about a couple weeks and went up to Cameron Bay, where the 458th transportation outfit was stationed. And Cameron Bay is basically wall-to-wall sand. And at that time, I think they had one or two of the, they call them larks or ducks, still stationed there. They were being decommissioned, and basically went to had nothing to do again. They were waiting for us to travel down to Vung Tau. All right. So we waited around there for about a month, and I went out one day and got sunburned, and I had blisters about 1 inch high in the back, and my first sergeant wanted me to go to first aid. Well, if I went to first aid, I would be court-martialed. I knew enough at that time, or I was now 24, that you don't want to get into anything. Or I should have, I was 25. So I basically turned around and I said, no, I'll get through it. And every morning the guys would have to peel the sheets off me. So I'd go out there and rake sand or go on garbage detail. Well, finally we got done with that, and we all moved down to the Vung Tau area. And we were stationed at Cat Lai, which was a Vietnamese naval base. in the Vung Tau Harbor, or not harbor, bay. And we were stationed there waiting for our boats, and our boats came in shortly after, I'd say within a couple of weeks, and we were just, all we had was a tent. There's about 10 of us in a tent. And then our boats came, and the first 7 boats that arrived, we were assigned to the boats, and I was assigned to the last boat. And I told the sergeant, I said, I will volunteer not to go if somebody else wants it. He said, no, you're going. You're there. So you are the Marine engineer on boat number 7. So we had to outfit the boats, and I have some pictures here to indicate that. But we were the first trained underneath the Navy in classroom training and physical training to accept the boats. The first PBRs that the Army had. And then we took the, after about, I would say another 3 weeks of outfitting and testing, we were ordered to take 2 boats down to the Mekong Delta. Well, to go down to the Mekong Delta from where we were, we had to cross the Vung Tau Bay. And the Vung Tau Bay mouth opens up to the Red China Sea. In the morning, nice and smooth and calm. On the way back in the afternoon, we had 10-foot swells. This boat was only made for 5-foot. The boats are basically, I'll give you a little background on the boats. They're 31-foot fiberglass boats, twin V6 Jimmy diesels with jacuzzi pumps. What the jacuzzi pumps does is sucks the water out and pushes it out, and that's what propels the boat. Each boat was 7.5 tons. So we would, at top speed, they were made for the river only, not for big waves. At the top speed, we would draft about 8 inches of water on a 7.5 ton boat. And that's about 35 miles an hour. Well, coming back from the Mekong Delta, we had a lot of guys that were greener than the boat, because we would have to chug up one wave and slide down the next. And we were lucky we got back. I would say that the commander at that time should have been reprimanded for what he did. So we all got back safely, and then we would have the bird colonels and the majors all come by once to see the boats, and we'd take them for rides and let them handle the boats and whatnot.
How many troops would they carry, those boats?
Basically, it was designed for 4, but we had 6. Each boat was complemented by the coxswain, the engineer, 1 MP as a front gunner, military police, 1 NG, which is a ex-infantry guy, as a rear gunner, 1 Vietnamese policeman, and 1 Vietnamese MP. All right? So we could stop and search anything on water or land, and we had that authority. And that's what we proceeded to do. We were assigned, 7 boats all went upriver, Saigon River, which is 45 miles upriver to Saigon. And they called the wharf area there Newport. And we were all stationed there in Newport on July 4th. Well, we wanted to celebrate July 4th, so we shot out some flares. Well, I thought they were under attack.
Oh.
So we basically said, that's not a good idea. Don't want to do that. So we basically went to, separated from there, we left 5 boats in the Saigon area. And we, 2 of our boats went down to Cat Low, which is about 5 miles back upriver, up another canal, where they would station 3 victory ships in there. And the victory ships were basically full of ammunition and bombs. And the Coast Guard was there to oversee the offloading of all this munitions onto barges. And the barges would be picked up on a daily event and be towed upriver to Long Bend, 15 miles upriver, and we would escort those tugboats. Two of our boats would escort them. and until they dropped off the barges, and we would come back. And we would also have a minesweeper from the Navy that would go in front of us, because they were, you know, a lot of times they'd like to sabotage, and you'd see a floating body come down, and a lot of times the bodies were rigged for explosives, mined. So we were basically making sure that they were not in any harm's way. But
So
they did get fired upon.
So you were sort of a military police,
We
so
were,
to speak?
we were attached to the 81st MP Brigade, which also gave us the authority over anyone that, you know, the U.S. Army, the civilians of Vietnam, and the Vietnamese Army, all right? So we would stop and search the sampans for any munitions, guns, smuggling, or anything of that sort. And so we had twin 50 machine guns on the front, we had a single on the back, we had a M79 grenade launcher, which was like a little Gatling type on a belt, and the grenades were like probably about 2.5 inches in diameter. And they would stick all the time, so you'd have to take them out and throw them overboard. Luckily we had a place to throw them. And we basically were in a few firefights, and every time we had that, we would have to get the Vietnamese policeman and the Vietnamese MP out of the way. They were useless. They would get under our foot. So we would have to put them below deck. In other words, they put them in the front of the boat. And we were assigned 45 caliber handguns, which were only good for close range, sawed-off shotguns, M16s. We had all the facilities we need. Never had enough grenades though, all right? Percussion grenade, basically, for swimmers. But we basically were a team, tried to be a team, and worked together, and successfully got through it. So during that time, we tried to make the best of it. We said, you want to ask me?
Like the members of your team, you were mentioning the different positions on the ship and so forth. Were they just placed there, or were they part of your group that was kind of progressing and training together and so on and so forth?
The coxswain and myself, which was a diesel marine engineer, were trained. The MPs were not trained. We would try to train the MPs. I had one MP was basically untrainable. He wanted to go on the bow and shoot cranes with an M16. Well, we let him do that one time. And then he comes back behind the coxswain stand with the rifle pointed down and his finger next to the trigger. And I told him to get out of there. He said, why? I said, you're standing on 90 gallons of fuel. If you shoot this off, we all go up.
Yeah.
So he was not at that time restricted, you know, and we fought all the time because the MPs thought they were in charge of the boats. But we had to go by maritime law, which the coxswain is the first in command.
What rank would that be, like
E4.
a captain, or only an E4?
E5. I became an E5 while I was there, but the coxswain didn't have as much time as being an E4 as I did, and so I became an E5, and I think he did shortly after I did. But that's what it was. We were basically on our own. We had the only guy that was ahead of us at our outpost was a E6, and he was not there most of the time. But our problems were, and I'm sure you've heard this before, we would be coming under attack. A lot of times at night. We would have to call in and ask permission to return fire. They would not give us permission most of the time because our 50 calibers could chop down trees. So most of the time when we came under fire and they wouldn't give us permission, we'd just move on. Because they're the fiberglass boats, there's basically very little armament. Right. Mostly right around the cockpit. So
Was this a test program, these 10 boats, or was this something that then expanded after
Well, first of
after
all, the
your
Navy
use?
had them
So
for a
what?
couple of years before we did.
Okay,
And the Navy did very well with them. Except the Navy, most of the guys there, they went up canals, but they couldn't turn around. And they would, a lot of times, be ambushed. Well, you gotta remember, the guys in my company, in my group, their average age was 22 to 23. We didn't have anybody less than 20. And most of them had a little bit more common sense, where we're mostly draftees and a few reservists. Not reservists, but
career,
well, the guys that volunteer.
okay,
Gone. So I was the US, they were RAs or whatnot. Okay.
right,
And basically, we just had a little more common sense, saying, well, if we go that far, we can't turn around, we're going to be in trouble. You know, think ahead. So, and nobody wanted to play the hero. And so, we had a couple of scrapes one time where we were, the tugboats that were taking the barges up the river, and we were fired upon. And the problem with the river is we would drop 12 feet in the upper and down of the river as the flow of the tide went in and out. And we're, like I say, 45 miles upriver, you would still see that effect. So when we went around down the river, and we had to make some like hairpin turns around the corners, there were high spots and low spots. And the low spots were usually on the inside of that corner, where the river could not flow and they would leave sand. Well, if we got on there with our boats, we'd be stuck, because our propulsion wasn't from propellers outside, it was from inside and jet stream. So if we couldn't suck water up, we couldn't get out of the way.
yeah,
And we came under attack one time in that situation where we were going around an inlet, and we were returning fire, but we couldn't get close enough. Like their boats were falling just short of us, and we were basically shooting into the wooded area, but not very deep. So we called for support to helicopters and whatnot, and they couldn't see anything, and we get around the other side, and on the other side was two boats. They were Navy boats. Navy PBRs training Vietnamese and firing through the woods.
oh,
They didn't even know we were there. And as soon as they saw us, they just scattered. They knew they were wrong. So, and at that time, they couldn't find any, they did a reconnaissance, they couldn't find anything wrong, and that's what happened. So, talk about friendly fire, that's what happens when a lot of people just don't realize what they're doing and where they're doing it.
yeah, they weren't communicating with one another, Army and Navy.
Well, the Navy didn't like us at all, because we had to get, the Army would not supply us with fuel. They had no way of doing it. So we had to go to the Navy, which is about 5 miles downriver, pick up our fuel from them. And they had PBRs. So if we ever left our boats, we had to have somebody guard there, because they would strip the boats down. Because they needed parts for theirs, so they would try to strip them. We caught them one time, because we had one boat that was disabled. We were supposed to take it down river to Vung Tau, where our maintenance base was, or I should say Cat Lai. And it was sitting there for about a week, and I found them stripping it down, and they wouldn't let me take the boat. I mean, my command. And so by the time we got done, there wasn't much left of it. But that's the way it goes.
And they end up rebuilding the boat that you had then?
Basically, yes. It took them quite a while to do it. And it's a shame, because it was nothing wrong with the boat. It was one of the engine failed, and we did have we had a problem all the time with you had to have the alarms on the boats. The sumps on the boats that would take the water out of the bilges and push them out would go through an outside outlet, flap door. And if you got any debris in there, that flap door would not close. And while you're sitting there in the water, it would start to fill up with water. Well, one of the guys didn't turn the alarm on after he came back. And when in the morning, we found it on the bottom. so he was submersed.
You're talking about having engine problems, that was what, 478 Torflow diesel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
V6 Jimmy diesels, right?
Yeah. He has experience with those. Enough said. Anyway, so then what did you do after that point in time? Did you,
Basically, I was there until mid-December, where I had my replacement, and I trained him. And I went back to Vung Tau, because I was supposed to be leaving just before Christmas, and I missed it by a day, so I got back to that area about just after, right around the Christmas time. I just think it's the day after Christmas. And my first sergeant says, "You've been after me all this time." The same first sergeant wanted me to shave my mustache off. And I said, "Sergeant, there's a directive out there saying I can have it." "Don't care, want it off." I said, "Well, one time I was with another friend and we were at the maintenance area and he wanted me to shave it off." And I didn't argue, just turned around to my partner over there and I said, "I guess I'm gonna have to write my congressman on this." Well, he never asked me again. So when I got to Vung Tau at the end of my time, and I was supposed to be rotating back into the States, he was there again. And this time he has much gentler. He wanted me to go to formation every morning, and I said, "No use, I'm going, I'm leaving." As soon as my orders are cut, I'm leaving on January 1st. So he said, "Well, you haven't had a re-up talk." I said, "Well, I don't need one, I'm not going to stay." And he said, "Well, we've got a new CO. You got to have a re-up talk." So I said, "Okay." Well, the CO that we had, and he's not mentioned in here, unfortunately, he was a major. We had a captain. But the major was a Green Beret, ex-Green Beret. And he's a pretty good guy. And he heard my whole story, and I told him I'm going back to work at Chrysler and all this other stuff, yada, yada, yada. And he says, "Sounds good to me." He says, "If I get out and I need a job, can I look you up?" I said, "Sure." So he was a pretty adamant guy. So we had some good times there too.
well, I know you brought a number of photos. Why don't kind of go over some of those, then kind of elaborate on, because I think you covered earlier, you know, a few of the items, but show us the photos.
It's hard to see. This is one of my hats. I belong to the AMVETS, and I also belong to the VFW and the Legion. Well, I've been a life member of the VFW and the AMVETS forever, and but I have a little pennant right here of the River Patrol Boat, all right? And I do have pictures, which is hard, they're very hard to see. And I don't know if you can see those or not.
Can you see that, Gary?
Yep, I got it.
That's one of our boats right there.
Okay.
And
So you can zoom in on
we basically had, this is what had the tugboats. They were pulling them up there, and the barges and whatnot.
That's very good.
Okay?
Got it.
And we would be basically in the, so I'm going to show you right here. This is outside our hooch. Our hooch was built on a French cement 20 by 20 slab on railroad wheels, you know, railroad train wheels. And what they would do, this is now a picture of the hooch. That big air, I'm trying to think of that, I want to call it a Quonset, it's not. It's for airplanes. Basically, that would take the, that whole cement platform we built our hooches on, was built by the French, and they would put their seaplanes on there, and they would cable that up there into the hangar and work on their planes. And so when we got there, we had a, I think it was 10 by 12 foot little building that we were supposed to get 15 guys in, and just couldn't, so most of us slept outside. And we finally got the wood, and we built our own hooch at that time. And then we would hope for basically the water to be brought in about once every 2 days, and we have showers available. But and we're all, basically all, they had these can docks that we were all tied up to all the time. Other times, if you ever saw the countryside of Vietnam, Vietnam is a very beautiful country. And it has a lot to offer. And this was outside of Vung Tau, so we would be going around and looking at the different areas we could see. We had, when we were on our patrols, this would be the sampan and or junk being a larger boat, and you could measure a junk by having the water buffalo standing crossways in it. So if you could get a water buffalo's crossway in there, that would be a junk. And the sampans were the smaller ones where you would scoot around, or they'd be the more of the motorized ones. So we would also have, this is our free time, and as a free time, I'm trying to get that out, okay. As a free time, we just go to the little cantina on our outpost there and get 15-cent beer. Happy hour would be 10 cents. And so didn't have much selection in the beer, and you didn't want to drink the Foster beer because that was terrible. But we would have that and movies. And the movies, we found out that you never wanted to take a shower after your duty and go to the movies, because the mosquitoes would eat you alive because they could smell the soap. And if you were stunk just as bad as everybody else, they would just leave you alone. So we found that out through trial and error. But a lot of the times we didn't have a lot of time to. We were working 12-hour shifts, and we didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of partying. But we did get a few times. We'd go down to downtown Saigon. We'd take the boat up there, and we'd be dropped off, and then we were ordered by our company commander at that time to wear sidearms. Well, you can't wear sidearms and go into a bar. So we had to find a USO, check our sidearms in, and then go to the bars. Yeah.
Were you single at the time you were in the service?
I was single.
And like, did you have a lot of communications back home, you know, through letters, or just pretty much on your own, or
Well, you
how
mean,
did that work? Just
Oh,
sort of
well-
like your family and friends or
yeah.
girlfriend or whatever you might get there.
we wrote with friends and family and girlfriends and whatnot. I even had one superintendent at Chrysler. He took me on like he was like the Godfather, and he was the only one that sent me a care package of the cookies and the cheeses and whatnot. And I thought that was a great feature. And of course, when I got back to Chrysler's, that's where I was. But he was a hard driving guy. When I was in Vietnam, my buddy I was telling you I was supposed to go to Seabees with, he came back and his wife was a nurse, and instead of being up in Alpena, in Posen area they were from, they came down to the Detroit area. Well, she got a nursing job, and so I told him, I said, go over to my old job and see if you can pick that up. Well, we went over there, and he hated it. And because the guy that sent me the care package, Lee Walsh, was a very antagonistic person. If he knew he could get underneath your skin, he'd just do it. All right? So by the time I got back, he had left Chrysler. And I got back, and I would just, you know, you could roll with the flow with that or fight back. And what you had to learn how to do when you're in the big three, and then you're in a plant where you had people that you know, they would slit your throat in a second if they could. But that's the way it was. And but we, as I was saying, he just went back, and he was a very inventive guy, and he finally retired a couple years ago from Cadillac Plastics up in Rogers City. But he was an engineer's engineer, where he could sit down and draw and figure out how a machine should be built, and he would build it and he would make it. for that company. And, I mean, physically made it.
Mhm.
So he just didn't just make the drawings and hand them off. So he was a very, very apt person that way.
You mentioned earlier about the unrest that you saw in Washington when you were there and so on. Did any of that come back through your correspondence, you know, with your family and so forth? I mean, would they kind of talk about that, or was that kind of just something everybody tried to forget about? And when they had someone in the service like yourself and
Well,
keep it away from you, so to speak?
we got a
so
little
forth.
bit of it. When I went to, just to give you a little background, when I was at Shattuck Military School, one of my classmates was Hubert Humphrey III. And the vice president at the time when I was in Vietnam was Hubert Humphrey. Well, Skip Humphrey is not like his father's all. His father was very boisterous, and when he came on campus, you can hear him from one end to the other. But Skip was a very mild-mannered guy, still is today, and a nice guy. Well, when we got to Vietnam during Tet, the start of Tet, and it lasted most of '68. And for him to be reelected, they stopped the bombing of North Vietnam. And in doing so, it embittered quite a few of the troops, and including me. We had the politics into it. So we were not against it. We did not like Hanoi Jane. We swore we would never watch one of her movies. And the only other problem I had is when I came back from Vietnam, and I had a guy that had half his foot blown off because he hit a mine with a bulldozer, and I was escorting him back to Fort Huron. And when we left the Oakland base to go back to the airport, got into the airport, and I was going through one of the concourses, and we were spit upon by the couple of guys walked by, because we had to travel in uniform for military passes. So that was a turn on, and especially with the guy that had half his foot rolled. So that was not a good experience, and I just like to tell that's the type of people and the mentality of the people they had at that time. None of us wanted to go there to fight for the fight. We went there because we didn't want to defect to Canada or anything else. We thought it was our civic duty or duty to do, and so we did it.
Well, it's a little different time in that period as well. I see on your bio information that you have partial loss of hearing from the war.
Yeah,
Is that from the firing, being on that small
50
boat?
calibers, yeah.
Yeah.
I have continuous ringing in both my ears. I've lost about 20% of my hearing, and should wear the hearing aids, but I don't as much as I should. And luckily, the VA got me a pair of hearing aids, and so I'm good to go right now.
Well, excuse me. When you came back, then would you get back to California and then back here and were released? Is that the way it worked at that time?
I had two January 1st. One in Vietnam when I left, and the other one in California, because the international date line, you go back a day. All right. On our way home, we were flying, and we stopped in Japan for a couple hours to refuel, and we got off the plane and sat in one of the air bases there. And when we got back on the plane, we were supposed to next stop in Anchorage, Alaska. Well, we're all in our summer fatigues, and we had a light jacket on. That was it. When we got up to about 30,000 feet, the captain of the airplane comes on and says, "We don't have to stop. We're flying right straight into Oakland." And everybody was happy about that, because we were cold even in Japan. It was like 30 degrees in Japan after coming out of Vietnam. But it was, like I say, it was a good experience. But I would have volunteered for it, probably not. Did I enjoy the camaraderie and the other guys? Yes. The 458, they have a web page that I'm trying to get a hold of the guys, and I'd like to have some more information on them. And I would like to get some more documentations and patches and whatnot. Because, again, a lot of the people just don't understand that we had the PBRs, and not too many people know about it.
I've never heard of this before either, and it's very, very interesting. And you know, you seem to have at least be quite proud of what you've done, and as well you should be, and continued on with supporting the veterans and the military in general, so to speak, from the different organizations that you belong to.
Definitely.
Is that something that just, you know, you enjoy the camaraderie, or like, because a lot of veterans say that they kind of just drop their friendships or whatever when they're back home, and have not continued on, you know, with anything.
It's hard to do. The two guys that I kept in touch with up until about 2 years ago, my fault, I just got sick of fighting the computer, trying to get online with regular landline. We're from out of Texas, Mater, Texas, and the other one's out of California, and he's on a sailboat there. He just goes where he wants to go, and living the life of Riley. So, but I had a couple of experiences in a lifetime. As working for Chrysler, I became a person that was doing a lot of traveling, because I was working for between stamping and assembly as a liaison for troubleshooting and part problems. So I would do a lot of traveling to all the assembly plants, in the U.S. and Mexico. And basically, you get to know other guys that are traveling from the company too, because there's not much to do. You're there for a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time, and you rotate. And basically, the guys that you run into, let's go out and have dinner together, or maybe go to a bar or something like that. Well, this one guy, Dan Pozovinsky, come to know him and talk to him and all this other stuff for years, and then about 15 years later, come to find out, he belonged to the 458th transportation outfit 6 months prior to me getting there. He was on the tugboats that were assigned to that company. And it's like, well, you know, how often do you run into somebody like this? And then talking to my doctor last month, he was in the Navy as a lieutenant. And he was a SEAL, Navy SEAL. And he worked out of Na Bay. That's where we used to get our fuel. And he was there in 67, the year before I was there. And he worked off the PBRs to recover sunken tugboats and other boats. And you just run into people like you've known for years. I've known my doctor for over 30 years because he used to be one of my neighbors, and that's what you come across. You're surprised it's ever happened.
Yeah. Well, did you bring any other items that you wanted to share?
Well, basically, I just have my orders rotating me back to I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. These are original orders, rotating me back, and I also have the, we're not even going to go on the plane ticket. Going home, and when I was in the Army, I did, this is my ROTC training certificate, and then I got the, this is from graduating from the leadership school, and then I have the AIT for seamen, and the AIT for the Marine types. And then I have, well, of course, my My ROTC, let's see, no, didn't do that. Oh, I had 2 courses in chemical warfare. Those are, because you're getting bored and not much to do, so you take on a few courses. And this is my recognition from Vallejo, California, offshore training, PBR. And then basically my honorable discharge. I got it in 1972, I think it was. One good thing about it, when I came back from Vietnam, I didn't have to serve any time in the reserves. So that made me happy. But no, this was the one I showed you. That's my 40 cents and a cup of coffee. So, but basically, other than that, I've got just odds and ends and a lot of paperwork going on. Do have one thing here. I have my yearbook from basic training. And all the guys in my platoon were from Michigan. But there was only 2 of us that were U.S. draftees, and there was only one of us that was an RA, which he signed up for. All the rest were
PRs?
well,
That's a 6-month wonders.
yeah, well, basically, no, all these other guys were reservists. They were just the guard and reservists. And so we had so with most of us, I'm in the
Oh, yeah.
upper right-hand corner here. I don't know if you're going to see that or not. Here, my finger there. So that's basically where we were at and what we did. And
Very interesting.
I've got a question, kind of going back to when you were in basic training,
Mhm.
and you were the acting sergeant.
yes,
Do you think that was because you had been in ROTC?
yes, that
And
was
you-
because of their OTC
See?
and plus the my level of education at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the first things they generally ask in basic training. Did anyone have any experience in?
Yeah.
I was in the same boat. So
Well-
and then
The other guy that was with me, he was my assistant, and he did not have any other, but he had owned his own business in Detroit, so through his father, and so he was the guy that I never got along with in basic training. So he knew everything, and nobody else knew anything. So we did not get along too well together, but we separated our ways after we went to EIT. He didn't go to Seaman School.
well, I think we had an excellent interview, and you provide a lot of good insight. Things that we've not heard before, and we really appreciate it. And we, again, certainly want to thank you for your service.
I appreciate it. There's just one thing I want to add right here. This is there anything you would like to add? One thing I would like to
On
add.
the bio, okay?
Yeah, and I'll probably get something for this, so. I said, all future presidents must serve sometime in the military.
I like that.
Because then they have a basic understanding what it's all about. Because
Good thought.
I see a lot of the guys coming back today from the Mideast, and I don't agree with what we've done over there. We can, and I have been to several different countries. You are not going to change the country to become like U.S. All right, so we can give them the right to try, but we cannot change them. And they've been fighting amongst each other for hundreds of years, and we're not going to stop them now. So I'm off my podium, so to speak.
Okay. Thank you again.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.